So, Steve, Cheryl is asking about Trey Sermon's work. 13 carries, 56 yards against Penn State, which is roughly the load that he carried against Nebraska. Master Teague, of course, the star of the running game on Saturday night.
Yeah, I thought Trey Sermon was a good complimentary back again. You know, in the first game, the running game numbers were in the low 200s. Second game again, low 200s total, which I think for a Big Ten opponent, those are good numbers. I think the devil's advocate would say that Fields propped that up with 50 yards of his own, or 55 in the first game, and that Garrett Wilson propped it up in the second game with a 62-yard run on the very first play of the game, which, again, how audacious was that, or whatever the word is, of Ohio? Audacious, I don't know. I'm trying to use big words, but I don't know any big words. How awesome was it to see Ohio State come out on the very first play and get the big run, 62 yards, and they scored by the third play. So that was to me a great beginning to the game for Ohio State. So I don't think you can underestimate that a bit. So I just feel that, you know, the running game is going to be fine. Do they have J.K. Dobbins? No, they don't. Do they need J.K. Dobbins to beat the next 5 or 6 teams that they play on the schedule? No, probably not. Do they have Justin Fields and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson who can eradicate a lot of mistakes and convert a lot of bad 3rd and 8s and 4th and 5s? Yes, they do. So I'm not too worried about it. I think this offense and their efficiency is going to be proven to be pretty good over the long haul.
Yeah, they don't have J.K. Dobbins back, but they could beat Rutgers with J.K. Rowling at running back. So I don't think it'll be an issue. I think with Trey Sermon and Master Teague, depending on who looks better each week, it'll just be which guy has the 30-yard run and which guy doesn't. Last week it was Master Teague. The week before it wasn't either of them. I would expect more of those big hits between those two guys, and it's just a matter of who has more as to who leads the team in rushing that particular day.
You know, I had an opportunity to go back and watch both of the games that they played, and I would certainly say that Michigan State game was as fluky gets. Michigan State for their big win over Michigan. Rocky Lombardi can throw the ball around a little bit. I like that the receiver, what's his name, Drew White. I think he's pretty good, but 7 turnovers or something of that nature certainly is going to be a great equalizer. We talk about if you can be +3 in this type of situation, you have a pretty good chance. I mean, +7 is significantly better than that. And then you go around and you watch the Indiana game, and Rutgers comes back down to earth a little bit, but who would have thought that they're only allowing like 121 yards a game on the ground? I mean, that's shocking. Granted, I don't think Michigan State has a real formidable ground game, and honestly, Indiana doesn't either. Stevie Scott hasn't been a shadow of what he'd been during his freshman year. Michael Penix can scramble and go, but I think that Rutgers is a nice story. I think a lot of people want to have sympathetically like what Greg Schiano is going to be able to do there, but they're still Rutgers. They've got a ways to go. You don't hit the transfer portal as hard as Schiano did, and immediately have success. I mean, you're going there to kind of put a tourniquet on the wound for now until you have an opportunity to get to the ER.
That's pretty good.
Maybe you need like a mob doctor that you go to help out. Like he's actually a veterinarian.
You got to stay off the records.
Exactly.
I watched the Indiana Rutgers game on BTN Football in 60, and Rutgers to me was competitive. It seemed for about a half. Isaiah Pacheco, their running back, he runs very hard. Indiana's defensive line took them apart, basically, took the Rutgers offensive line apart. Noah Vedral started his career at Central Florida, transferred to Nebraska, and is now at Rutgers. He was, I think he was Martinez's backup. I think, at Nebraska. And he has a very slow overhand delivery like that. And the ball comes out kind of slow. Now, he did make a really nice over-the-top pass for a touchdown against Indiana. I think he beat Brendan White, the safety who transferred from Ohio State. It could have been a zone coverage. It may not have been a man coverage. I don't know. I wasn't really watching it that closely. But what happened in this game was, as it wore on, in Indiana's advantage in personnel, again, as we see with Ohio State, it's a battle of attrition. And that's what kind of happened to Rutgers in the game against Indiana. They fell apart kind of as things kind of went on. And they broke through deep in their own end. Rutgers was backed up on its own end. And they broke through and they hit Vedral, and the ball went straight up in the air, and one of the linemen from Indiana intercepted it at the 5-yard line or something, and I think they got a touchdown out of that. So, and then he came back after that. Now they're looking at a double-digit deficit, and it was kind of like the play Clifford threw for Penn State against Ohio State, where he just kind of threw it out there in the right flat and hoped one of his guys would end up with it. And an Indiana guy got it and brought it back, to set up another score, I believe. So in some regards, they imploded. And I don't foresee a scenario where they run the ball at all against Ohio State with that offensive line, unless it's gimmicks and trick plays and side to side and something goofy, laterals or God knows what. And then I don't think they're going to pass protect for Vedral very well either. He is a plucky guy. He got out of the pocket and ran for a couple first downs, but he's just a placeholder. And I don't know, again, I don't know what's going on there. Is Satowski, is he hurt? Is he even still there? I don't even know. He didn't play either the first two games. This Langen, who played last year, against Ohio State, he's the backup, and they put him in when I think Vedral may have gotten dinged. I just don't know what's going on there. And Vedral, I assume, is a 8th-year senior or whatever after he's on his third school, that he's not the future at this position, but he's not a guy you're going to win with in the Big Ten on any kind of a consistent basis. And they won the game against Michigan State because Michigan State just gift wrapped it and gave it to them. 2 interceptions by Lombardi and 5 fumbles, I think, was the recipe. And, Michigan State just self-destructed and gave it to them. Well, the reverse was true in this game. It was 3 turnovers for Rutgers and none for Indiana, and that's how Indiana won the game. So that's my long and short on Rutgers. I don't foresee them being in this game with Ohio State for very long. I think if Ohio State gets this aerial circus up and running early, it could get ugly. And I think the thing that kind of you come back to is he's got veteran players, a lot of transfers, and so we'll see if those guys can keep Rutgers in this game for longer than a quarter or so. But in some ways they're all mercenaries. They're all there playing for their own future. Hopefully, like Brendan White's playing, hoping to get a look for the NFL. So, what does that mean? I don't know, but I can't see him being in this game for very long on Saturday.
The Michigan State game, they turned it over 7 times. They actually fumbled 6 times, only lost 5 of them. So that was nice and pleasant. And then they also had 2 turnovers on downs. Michigan State did. And I think they only punted. I don't even know if they punted in that game, just because there were turnovers on downs and plenty of points scored, and then Rutgers kind of had to hang on. I just see a bad game coming for Noah Vedral. I don't know how he's going to have time to throw the ball. And then he's got a couple of decent receivers in Bo Melton, who's he's fine, and Aaron Cruikshank, who transferred over from Wisconsin, they're fine. But I think the Ohio State corners will be up to the task. I saw somebody ask about Seven Banks, how he's doing, and he's their starting corner, so he's going to be out there. And the loss of Cam Brown is significant, because now you figure out how do you replace him Is there no rotation outside at all? And Cam Brown was a guy who was also coming in to the slot on nickels. So what do they do there? Do they just keep Marcus Williamson out there the entire time? We saw Josh Proctor getting in there. Saw Lathan Ransom, the freshman safety, getting in there at the end of the game as well. And Kerry Combs said that could be something that continues on. So there's definitely questions in the secondary. The safeties, I believe they both graded out as champions this past week, and the corners didn't. But I don't think Rutgers can – Rutgers' passing game just doesn't have anything for Ohio State, I don't think. And I do like Isaiah Pacheco, the running back, and maybe he gets like a 30-yarder and rushes for 52 yards on 17 carries, something like that. But, there's – I don't know if Ohio State covers. What is it? Is it still – what's the line?
38 this morning.
38.
Full 38.
So what's that, 52-14? That seems pretty easy for Ohio State, right?
It does. And I was going to say, to get to the 14, I think Ohio State, whether it's a situation of where it's a coverage bust or something along those lines, or they give Rutgers a short field. I mean, Justin Fields is not throwing interceptions. He threw 3 last year, 2 of them in the championship game. He only has 7 incompletions through 8 quarters of football at this point, 7 plus, I guess. I'm not looking for a situation where Ohio State's going to be fast and loose with the ball and putting it on the turf or throwing it into defenders' arms. But, these types of games always seem to have a way of where there's a play or two, especially, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it this year until proven otherwise. Defenses are way behind offenses this year. So I think that there is a chance that Rutgers could find a couple of points in this game. But, Ohio State has only not gotten into the 50s once in the 6-game history of this series, once, and they got 49 that time. So I think them getting into the 50s is pretty safe. I think it's just a matter of, does Rutgers get a play, early on some sort of mistake by Ohio State? Does Rutgers put some points up on the board against the 2s and 3s? Because this is going to be a good opportunity to be able to get guys out there and rotate and get your entire second team out there, maybe even get your entire third team out there. If they're in a shutout situation, you always want to try and pitch the shutout. But yeah, I think it's somewhere going to be in that 10 to 14 point range for Rutgers just based on happenstance.
One of those Ohio State freshman quarterbacks will throw an interception to Brendan White or something like that. Because you're going to play them, assuming the game is out of hand, and it's time for them to start throwing the ball. So it will be interesting to me to see which freshman quarterback goes first. Jack Miller got to go first against Nebraska. Is it now C.J. Stroud's turn to get in there and let him throw the ball around a little bit? I'm interested in seeing that personally.
Well, they gave up 14 to Maryland last year, but hit them up for 73. So the 59 still covered by quite a bit. So
they gave up 21 to Rutgers. It was 56-20 or 56-21. Yeah.
Yeah, they won by 35.
That was on the road.
Yeah.
You don't go into SHI Stadium, whatever the hell it's called, and just not give up. I mean, that's the price of admission.
That's a bunch of SHI.
There's the birthplace of football, baby.
Speaking a lot of S's and H's and I's, Isaiah Pacheco is at 3 yards per carry, to Tony's point in regards to, he's had 2 decent games, but against Indiana and Michigan State at 3 flat per carry. So I don't see him hitting up Ohio State for $120 or anything like that. The Block O, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. We appreciate that. How many wins in a row does it take until it's no longer a rivalry? Well, basically, I'm thinking that Rutgers joined the Big Ten in 2014. It's 6 consecutive wins for the Buckeyes. So at this point, I'm still willing to give it some time. What do you guys think?
Well, Rutgers already has a rivalry with Michigan, so I don't think Ohio State. I don't think Rutgers has room for an Ohio State rivalry at this moment.
Okay. Not. The Buckeyes still playing toward a rivalry with Rutgers, according to Tony. So we'll keep it in the Maryland and Michigan camp for the Scarlet Knights.
Ohio State has a rivalry with Purdue. That's a program they have to deal with. Unfortunately, they ducked them this year because of the schedule change. So.
When there was that 10th game added on, I was like, and it was going to be in West Lafayette. I was like, somebody just doesn't like them. I don't know what the hell's up with that, but when they were able to drop back down to 9, or 8, I guess 8, it was a nice situation to get the Boilermakers off of there, because that's been a house of horrors through the years.
It has been more than once, going back to, I remember that Jim Everett game in '84, that Ohio State team that went to the Rose Bowl and won the Big Ten, tripped up at West Lafayette. Of course, the Braxton Miller overtime game in 2011. Even the team that went to the Rose Bowl in 2009 tripped up against Purdue. The team that beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl tripped up there in West Lafayette. My goodness.
That was was that the year that Danny Hope said, "Get used to it"?
Is that what he had to say?
I do remember that. That may have been the year.
Well, if you're going to have one of those games in your career, and that's the only one, you might as well capitalize on it.
Mm-hmm.
You might as well do that. To Roberto's point that Tony alluded to and commented back, the Seven Banks comment about the soft coverage, and not to pick on him for a few plays, but I just remember seeing him on one particular play where there was an out run in front of him where the ball was probably at the Ohio State 12-yard line. Like there was no room to get beat, and he's got his heels practically on the goal line. And I'm just wondering, like, is he getting any instruction from the sideline after lining up like that several plays?
Well, the coaches are telling them, where to line up on each play. So, like, when they're off coverage like that and you give up a comeback or an out, like, I don't know how you're supposed to stop that. If you're giving them that kind of cushion, they're just going to take it. They'd be crazy not to. And that's something also the quarterback sees and just changes it right then and tells Dotson or whatever, that just come right back and we'll pick up an easy 8 or 12 yards. And yeah, so that to me, that goes to the coaching. If you want to have press coverage, then play press coverage. Now, if they can't because they don't have the corners, then then we can talk. Maybe that's an issue. I don't think it's an issue with Sean Wade. It shouldn't be an issue with Seven Banks, but maybe it is. And if we don't see much press coverage throughout the year, then
Kasami 47 Crip here commenting that Ohio State can't win a championship. Well, I'll clean up the typos here. I'll attempt to, without the assistance of corrupt ref. So, I think it's probably a valid point, but at the same time, I would hand that argument to the Oregon fan base. They can take that up if they have issues with the way the championship game was officiated in 2015. So I would leave that to the Oregon fan base. I've not heard anything out of them, but apparently there's some issues in that 22 win.
That was a very close game. I think wasn't it decided by one score, or maybe it was decided by like 3 or 4. I can't remember how many scores that game was actually decided by, but I think it was a lot.
Yes.
What do we make of this Big Ten race, Kevin? Or is it a race?
Well, I mean, there's a race in the West. I mean, the team that I think everybody thought was going to be, at least the clubhouse leader is now, down 2 games. If they're not able to play a third one, they're not even going to be eligible to play for the Big Ten championship. I don't know. I mean, you got Purdue sitting 2-0 right now. You got Northwestern sitting 2-0. Yeah, based on everything that I've seen so far, I mean, I like Purdue a little bit better than I like Northwestern from just what I've seen on tape. But I don't know. And then if you go back to the East, I was joking with Steve as we were leaving the stadium after the Penn State game. I was going to say, has Ohio State clinched the East yet? And I mean, while it's not quite to that point, you got Penn State sitting 0-2. You already have Michigan with a loss. I still really have a hard time saying that Michigan State would be in the race whatsoever. Just they should be disqualified for that Rutgers game. And then you got Rutgers, Maryland, and in Indiana. I mean, I don't know. I think that Ohio State is sitting pretty in the East. Wow, going out on a huge limb there. But the West, I mean, I don't know, coin flip. It just
Jake Funk and Talia Tungavailoa might have something to say about that. They still have the head-to-head to get a game there. But to your point, Kevin, I'm going to tout myself as looking pretty smart at this point because I went Ohio State at 9-0, and then I had a bunch of 6-3 teams. So I wasn't buying into this Penn State's a college football playoff contender. They're going to play within a field goal of Ohio State, maybe win the game, win the Big Ten, maybe lose the game, still be a viable contender. Michigan's back, all this other business. I just saw it as a glut of top 25 teams underneath Ohio State. And we shall see, but it's already starting to look like that.
I would just say in terms of the Big Ten, there is a thing with Wisconsin. If other games get canceled, they're not going to hold them to that 6-game standard. I mean, it could be lessened to 5 games if other games get canceled, which as of right now, we haven't seen any inclination that anybody else is ready to cancel games. So they really do need to field a team next week against Michigan. And, I would take my chances at 5-1, even if you lose to Michigan and come back and beat everybody else. You probably make the championship game. So, it is what it is. The quarterback should be back by the game after Michigan, I would think. So, if not, if they can find a technicality to get him back for Michigan. So, I don't know. I guess that West is kind of a mess. I mean, Iowa's 0-2, Minnesota's 0-2, Nebraska's 0-1. Man, it's dicey. I think, as Kevin said, we were joking. Can you already put a star by Ohio State because Penn State's not going to win that division, and if Michigan doinks off another game, they're probably not going to win the division either. So, and they don't look like they're much count, to be honest with you. They may not be as good as they've been in recent years. So, good old 9-4 Jim. I don't know, if they may end up like 4-4 instead of 9-4. I don't know.
It's a good thing we have a guy that writes a Michigan piece that watches them closely that might be able to give his view on them. But Steve and I were in the car listening on the radio to it, and Brandstetter was going to lose his ever-loving mind over the inability of Michigan to run the ball. I mean, and Deerdorf wasn't much happier either. I mean, they were apoplectic about what was going on.
Yeah, the Michigan precincts are all reporting, and the Wolverines are out of it. They're officially out of it, of the running in the Big Ten East. And Kevin, I'm with you on their running game. They share this. They split the carries between 4 guys, and good luck building up any kind of a lather when you do that. And I saw Jay Harbaugh say this week that, well, we have no plans on changing that. Like, if something doesn't work and you have no plans on changing it, you should be fired. Now, his dad's not going to fire him because his dad is calling all of the shots. But if things don't work, then change them. Zach Charbonnet had a 70-yard carry on his first carry of the year. I believe he has gained 3 yards on his next 8 carries. And sure, he's still averaging like 8 yards a carry, but is he really? And yeah, I think they need to go to Hassan Haskins and just ride with him and let Joe Milton run, take some hits. He's a big guy. He can handle it. The little freshman Blake Corum, get him involved here and there, but you got to narrow that stuff down. And we saw how J.K. Dobbins struggled with it in 2018, and he was just splitting carries with Mike Weber. And I couldn't even imagine 4 guys trying to do that. And this isn't like 1992 with Raymont Harris and Robert Smith and Butler Benote and Dante Lee and Jeff Cothran and Scotty Graham. And that's a different time. Granted, that was awesome to watch way back when, but none of these guys are those guys.
No.
Yeah, 3 of those guys played substantial time in the NFL.
Yeah, it was telling to me that they had Milton doing his post-game interview, and they asked him about the linebacker Simmons who wrecked them. And he was the captain. We're listening to the game, and they mentioned, Simmons is out there for the coin toss. He's like the number 1 guy on their defense, and he just wrecked them. And the game's over, and Milton, they ask him, what'd you think of Simmons? And it's like, he wasn't even on my radar or something. And that's just either you're oblivious or you're arrogant or you don't study the game or you didn't put your time in or you don't care or whatever it is. It's par for the course going on 16 years at Michigan, just apathy and just substandard football. That's all it is. It ain't like it used to be. I'll say that.
Yeah, Steve, I wrote about that in Michigan Monday, where whatever the reasoning was for Joe Milton, whether it was arrogance or not knowing, whatever the reason was, that's why you lost. Either you went and completely – they thought they won that game once they beat Minnesota.
Or touchdown favorite.
And Michigan State lost to Rutgers. The game was over at that point. They knew it, and they just – whether it was a lack of preparation or arrogance or both. I mean, lack of preparation is arrogance, basically. And, man, those chickens came home to roost something fierce that day.
The loss to me wasn't shocking. It was surprising, definitely, 22 points. I didn't pick Michigan State to win. I certainly gobbled up those points and said, I'll take 22. But it was the manner in which Michigan lost that game. So this is not Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State circa 2012, Le'Veon Bell and the rest of the backs that they had that would just beat you into submission. This is, a ground game that for Michigan State that gained less than 2 yards per carry against Rutgers. So they come in, they don't run the ball against Michigan very effectively. They started to a little bit in the second half, but it's basically Rocky Lombardi, who when he won the starting job in a 3-man battle, I thought, Michigan State's in a world of hurt here. If he's winning the starting job, he had played 16 games, had close to 200 pass attempts, 43% completion percentage coming into this season, more picks than TDs, and he's standing in a clean pocket, and he didn't throw high percentage passes. He went 17 for 32, which isn't great, but chunk plays, 323 through the air, 3 TDs, no picks. Somebody mentioned here Ricky White. Ricky White, I had to look him up. 70th rated player in Georgia, true freshman, 3-star, 70th rated wide receiver in the country, caught one ball against Rutgers for 5 yards, comes into this game and he looks like Plexico Burress and almost broke his record for receiving yards against Michigan. They looked like the more athletic team on the perimeter, both offensively and defensively. Michigan's wideouts couldn't separate from Michigan State's DBs, and Michigan State's DBs was winning one-on-one matchups continually downfield against Michigan's corners. And when they weren't, they were getting yanked to the ground, holding calls and pass interference calls that were legitimate. Michigan did not look like the more athletic team, and they're supposed to be.
The starting cornerback, Vincent Gray, was eventually benched because he gave up completions of 53, 50, and 40, not to mention he had a pass interference and a holding call. So then he gets benched for redshirt freshman Jalen Perry, who then immediately gets flagged for holding. He later also gives up a 31-yard, I think maybe a touchdown catch to Ricky White at the end. No, it wasn't a touchdown, but it got him down to like the 10-yard line. And then you had the other starting corner, Jamon Green, who's a 3-star, like number 50 corner in the nation, his class, and Vincent Gray is the same thing, just like number 70 a corner or whatever. Jamon Green gave up a long one, had also a pass interference or a holding call, and it was all of these guys. Against Minnesota, they threw deep twice against Michigan, completed both passes. They threw the ball deep 10 times against Michigan, deep being 30 yards or more downfield, completed 5 of them. That's not counting the pass interferences or the holdings. 2 of the incompletions were defended by Daxton Hill. One of the incompletions was caught out of bounds. These corners are terrible, and Daxton Hill, their safety, sophomore safety, is their best defensive player. He's their best cover guy. I don't know what you do. Do you put him at corner, and then you have true freshman Makari Page as one of the starting safeties, and then you just attack the safeties? So there's no good answer in the secondary for Michigan because the recruiting has suffered for so many years.
And I was going to jump in on that real quick too, is they don't recruit against Ohio State, which is fine because probably not going to beat Ohio State for a lot of guys, but we're recruiting against the SEC. You're recruiting against the middle to bottom of the SEC. You're not recruiting against UGA and Alabama and LSU all that much. You're recruiting against Arkansas and Mississippi State, and some of those schools. The talent just isn't there. But more than that, they're not developing anybody. You know what? It's fine. We can sit there and talk all we want to about how Chris Olave being a 3-star. Well, guess what? First of all, I think the recruiting services, rivals included, missed on that one. But second of all, Olave he's gotten better and better and better and better, and he's been getting coached up, and it's just night and day in terms of the development between the programs.
Got Bleach Orange with a super chat contribution. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Hey, Mark, I caught the Clemson Notre Dame preview stream after it ended and wanted to express my appreciation for the coverage when I could catch you live. Thank you, Bleach Orange. Appreciate that. We also had something from wanted to catch up with this because I always appreciate when I take a few tongue-in-cheek comments towards somebody and then they respond with a super chat contribution. So Kitsame 47 Crip, or however you pronounce the beginning of that, the voice of college football is the best. Go Mark. So a rather yes, mature response to our little needling about Miami and Ohio State.
Should we all apologize? Is that what you want us to do, Mark?
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I would like.
Big game for the Canes on the road at NC State.
Yes, Friday night.
Big game.
Thanks for the promo, Steve. We'll do a live stream here right after the game.
Wow.
So, big call-in show live stream. So if you boys want to do some NC State Miami analysis for us, you're welcome.
Don't lose to the Wolfpack. That's my analysis.
We'll do that.
Not how I want to spend my birthday. I'm going out to dinner.
All right. Very nice. Don't want to watch the Wolfpack. Uh-oh. Dave Doran, 25-37 in the ACC. So I had a bit of a blistering rundown of Dave Doran's tenure at NC State after 7 years. How you keep your job winning 38% of your games in the worst conference in college football, I don't know.
Valid question.
Yamamoto's not walking through that door.
It's chest first.
I think back here in the Big Ten, if Michigan State goes into Iowa and beats Iowa, which can't even get a first down, I wonder if this is the beginning of the end for Kirk Ferentz, be 0-3, and then however it ends up after that, I don't know. But kind of embattled and everything else that's going on, when you start losing on the field, plus you got off the field problems, even though I think the Iowa hierarchy could certainly make the case that maybe it's time to go in a new direction. So they could be looking for a new coach.
Jim Harbaugh.
In Michigan, certainly. He is the only Power 5 coach who does not have a contract beyond 2021, which, back in the Cooper days, that was, recipe for no recruiting. If you didn't have a 4 or 5 year deal that automatically rolled over, people recruited against you, and you didn't sign anybody. So I don't know that it's necessarily the same way today, but you got to wonder, what direction is that going to go? And Indiana has not beaten Michigan since 1987. I think they've won 24 in a row. Michigan has, and they beat them pretty good last year. Some of the recent games have been pretty good. I think they went to overtime a year or 2 ago, or 2 years ago.
Twice.
Yeah, and now last year I think it was like somewhere in like 38-15 or 33-15, something like goofy like that. But
39-14 if we want to keep.
If you want to be accurate, yes, in the interest of accuracy. Indiana to me is an interesting thing. They, football there is not really their biggest thing. And I once made the comment that Indiana is not going to go to the college football playoff because they just don't invest the money. Ohio State invests 3 times the money. And it's not even just the $7 million head coach. It's 55 people running around, doing the work of 100 people, that Ohio State has, whereas Indiana support staff's probably 15 people. It's just the way it is. And could they win this game? It's almost like they need to breathe and believe that they can win this game against a university, a school that, nobody's ever seen them beat. If you're under the age of 34, you've never seen Indiana beat Michigan. So can they believe that they can do it? That's the big thing. I think the hurdle they have to overcome. And Michigan has to play with a sense of urgency. If they can't come out and go right down the field on Indiana and get a couple early stops on Penix, and they screw around, and it's like 13-10 at halftime or something. They very well could get beat. So I I don't know. That'll be a fun one to watch. I know
It
that.
will be fun. And if Tom Allen's showing his players tapes of the Michigan State game, and they don't believe that they can beat Michigan, I don't know what else he can do.
Yeah.
Well, as Tony said, they can't. The corners can't play that well. I mean, so who's gonna line up against Weiler? I mean, who's going to be able to do that? I mean, who's going to be able? I know it's not a corner's responsibility on drawing the tight end, but Peyton Hendershot's pretty good. I mean, how are they going to take him out? But I'd feel a lot better about Indiana's chances if they could run the damn ball, and they really can't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think you'll see Daxton Hill on Whop Phillier, who is basically a slot guy most of the time anyway, I think. So that's where Hill is comfortable. But yeah, if you can still give Penix time and he's accurate, which he wasn't always accurate in the Penn State game. He's not the most accurate guy, but we've seen you don't have to be the best receivers to make waves against the Michigan corners. You mentioned Ricky White. Jalen Naylor, the other receiver who was making plays, the number 750 player in his class 2 years ago, number 118 receiver overall, and he was making them look foolish as well. So if you can give Penix time and maybe run him as well, and run him and Stevie Scott with some zone read, and because Michigan's defensive line, I mean, Chris Hinton started last week, defensive tackle, former 5-star guy. He's never done anything really at Michigan, so they don't have a lot of depth, and maybe you just wear them out. But I think we all said coming into the season, this is the year that Tom Allen has to beat somebody. Indiana has to beat somebody they're not supposed to. They did that with Penn State. They won the crazy game that they did. So they're learning how to win. The culture is being built. And I think they are more than capable of winning this game. But this is also a Michigan program that is up and down. So is this the week they're up? And if so, then maybe they win. And not having the crowd will help Michigan. But Joe Milton needs to get better. The offensive line needs to get better. But again, this is Michigan, so they shouldn't have been as good as they were against Minnesota, but Minnesota gave them that game, quite a bit of it. Does Indiana do the same thing to help them out?
Could certainly play into Michigan's favor that they're hitting Indiana on a letdown after they got up for the Rutgers game. Could be that factor as well. All right. In regards to predictions, I don't know that we need to spend too much time. Do the three of you just have some kind of variation off of like roughly 50-7?
Yeah, I think I gave him 14. I think I'm 56-14. I like Ohio State to be in multiples of sevens and not threes based on the place kicking situation right now, not knowing how Blake Hobbiel's going to do, not knowing if we're going to see them go with the walk-on or go with the true freshman or whatnot. And then again, these are the type of games where you'd like to maybe try and sort some things out. But yeah, I think I'm probably somewhere around 56-14.
I said 55-14, so we're probably have a like mind there. Ohio State, they've played 6 times since 2014. Ohio State is 6-0. Average margin of victory is 46.3 points, I believe. So typically these games are not very suspenseful. It was 35-7 at halftime, 49-7 in the third quarter before Rutgers scored a couple late touchdowns for some window dressing, 56-21. And again, my misgivings with Rutgers, I mean, great, you beat Michigan State in a game Michigan State turned it over 7 times, and maybe you did force some of that, I guess, with a veteran, transfer-laden defense or whatever, but I just think Ohio State's advantages on the offensive and defensive line are too much, and I think you're going to see Rutgers cave in a little bit here probably by the second quarter, and this one could be like 28-7 or something at halftime, and a couple more possessions for Fields and get a ball cap on him. My goodness, the weather here this weekend is I would advise everyone to go out and play golf or go to the park or go do something outside, because we're going to be pushing 70 degrees on Saturday and Sunday with little to no chance of rain here until the following Tuesday. So this might be the last great weekend of the year, 2020, in Central Ohio, and the game's not till 7:30. So you got all day on Saturday to get out and enjoy the day.
I will go. Nobody else has gone 56-7. Is that correct? Then I will do that. I think 56. Although
Big Vedral believer, huh?
I'm trying to convince myself that it's 56 instead of 49 because I think Justin Fields is going to get out of there early in the third. So then you're leaving it up to somebody else to score like 14 or 21. And can they do that? Probably the defense maybe gets 7 of those, and then maybe it's a little easier. But they should be able to score 56 against this team with, whoever at quarterback. Gunnar Hoke throwing for 280 yards in the fourth quarter, something like that, something crazy. Just throwing it in the fourth quarter while they're up by 5 touchdowns. And then, of course, Ryan Day will apologize. And, well, we didn't really have the offense in to take a knee, so we decided to throw it all over the field. I'm sorry about that, guys.
I've never heard of that. What's funny is before every game, they practice under center snaps. I mean, and they certainly do it every day in practice. They have all the centers line up and then all the quarterbacks line up 1, 2, 3, 4 right behind them. And they seriously get under center and they take a snap and, then fake like a handoff or whatever. So you're telling me that a able-bodied 18, 19-year-old Jack Miller wasn't capable of taking that snap from under center like he does every day in practice, probably 4 or 5 times. They'll do it a lot. Take that snap and then go down on his left, or he had the choice of knees. He could have gone down on his left knee or his right knee. I mean, either one. I mean, pull this leg and it plays jingle bells. Come on.
But Steve,
come on, man.
They didn't have the guy in the game who is 10 yards behind.
The guy stands back there,
the safety guy. They didn't have that guy, so you can't risk losing the game in that moment. You can't risk somebody fumbling and then scoring 20 points or whatever. That
49-17.
The 32-point play that would be required. You can't risk that, Steve.
No, you really can't.
So I think Nicholas Lindbergh, I think he's onto something here. So if Ohio State scores and goes for 2 in overtime, and then Rutgers goes for 2, but Ohio State brings it back for 2, and the score, the Buckeyes win by 4 in overtime, 63-59.
Maybe Ohio State scores the touchdown. Ohio State scores the touchdown in overtime. Rutgers then kicks the field goal to only lose by 4.
The rare 4-point win in overtime.
That's the scenario. That's what's going to happen. Absolutely. All right. Good stuff with these guys each and every time. Hope everybody out there appreciates what we bring each week with Tony Gerdeman, Buckeyes Scoop, Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports, Bucknuts, and, of course, Buckeye Grove's Kevin Noon on Rivals.